Hi, this is John Ryan with Team Handball News, and back with me is Joey Williams from the Detroit Handball Club. And hey, what's the deal with Detroit Handball Club? I look at the European teams; they're like envious of the American naming convention. Like the Washington Wizards or the Detroit Pistons or Detroit Tigers. I mean, you got Berlin Foxes, the Rhine-Neckar Lions. Like the new clubs typically in Europe are they're jumping on the city region plus mascot team name. And I get a little annoyed with like all our like soccer clubs in the U.S. Like I don't know, Atlanta United, and screw that. We're Americans. Why can't we have uh, traditional American mascots, naming conventions? Thoughts?
Oh, I've got thoughts on that. Yeah, it's that's a topic I think that there's valid arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
For me, I think the spirit of um, representing the community and doing it in a way that's authentic and without, I mean, limiting the gimmicks, is more where my head's at. I'm also kind of me, like the Danish way of life is had an impact on me, and so like the idea of Skien being a tiny town and them just I mean they are, and that's a terrible example because they're the stars. So look at me, yeah, who knows, maybe we'll be the Detroit, I don't know, cars or something. But yeah, I don't know, just the idea of authentically representing the city in a way with as little frills as possible resonates with me. I mean, I think the MLS is a little bit silly with like the Real Salt Lake or Sporting Kansas City. That
That,
just a little bit, but like I don't know, just keeping it simple. Detroit
that
handball.
that's where I was getting at. I kind of almost sense sometimes like from a marketing standpoint that sometimes the European clubs are envious what the U.S. sports teams have done, and they've started to create mascots just to like Kiel. They don't say they're the Kiel Zebras, but they got that goofy zebra running around. I, I guess that's my point. It's like, well, maybe Detroit should have a nickname. Maybe that can be a social media frenzy. People can select among four different uh, uh, possibilities to name the Detroit mascot.
I think we've got much bigger problems to solve in Detroit before we get to the mascot conversation. What, John? If we are to the point where it's like, okay, how do we get more fans? Then yeah, maybe we'll revisit that discussion. But right now, it's a matter of
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're gonna shift the discussion here a little bit, and that was kind of a lead in a bit to talk a little bit about social media and social media presence, because I made some friends on Twitter when I was a little critical, skeptical of some of the campaigns, if you will, and not just mostly through Detroit, because you guys are very active, and that it garners a lot of attention. And I guess I look at social media as a tool to to get the word out of the great things that you're doing. But sometimes I feel like in the handball community, a little bit we get into the uh, attention for attention's sake, and um, it comes a little bit of a what are we trying to accomplish? And probably the most prominent one where I was just shaking my head was, and maybe I've got this wrong, but when the Shack of Handball was announced as a Detroit ambassador, I was like, what what is this? I mean, is this, as an ambassador, is it just I mean, he's a cool guy. I loved watching him play. And I'm talking about Gautier Muvumbi, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, who was kind of a sensation during the World Championships. Give him the ball. He's going to suck it in and he's going to score. And, it was fun to watch and became like a big thing. And so let's start from that. And maybe, maybe I'm an old school guy and maybe I just don't get social media entirely. So talk about the newest ambassador to Detroit handball and what his role is.
There's a lot there, John. There's a lot there in what you just said. I'll tackle it in two parts. I'll tackle in the social media part first, and the legend of Gautier second. But we live in a world, for better or for worse, where there's a real you and there's a virtual you, where your presence online, for better or for worse, is your presence to the rest of the world. So I think it's more important than just a simple tool. I think manicuring and making sure that you are giving the best and most engaging version of yourself online on social media is paramount to what we're to just any sort of business. Maybe not any sort, but to the business that we're in. And it shows. In the form of Gautier. So, and you know what? Actually, before I move on, here's an example. You and me, I consider we have a good relationship. We've met in person maybe 3 times max, but I feel like we have a pretty good. I would call it a friendship. I would call it a friendship, John Ryan. So there it is. I consider you a handball friend. We engage through social media quite a bit, and we, have gotten to know each other. So social media is very important, and that's why we emphasize that quite a bit.
Well, yeah, definitely. But I guess my point is, I think it's important to get the word out and get folks in. It's how people found you to join your team, and I think that's it's a tremendous tool. I mean, I'm thinking back when I was doing my clubs. If we had maybe, what was that, MySpace? Maybe MySpace was there in DC when I was trying to start a team, and I'm like, oh wow, we could have really gotten a lot more people out there. And part of it sometimes, and I think you kind of brought it in. It's what people see, and it's the vision that you have. But sometimes it's kind of like it's kind of like the perfect couple with all their great trips that, and look at my kid that's, going to Harvard and whatnot. But then the reality behind that is, they're getting divorced and the kids going to reform school. And I get a little, sometimes I have a hard time separating reality in that facade. And I guess I'm looking at that, but I guess maybe the question is, maybe it doesn't really matter. If the goal is to grab attention. Is that kind of where you were going, or
not quite?
Help me out here.
You have to back it up in person, because you can only be a social media account for so long before it becomes very, very obvious that there's no substance behind it. And so I think, again, too, that's one thing we're proud of is, sure, we really go for the long ball on social media, but we back it up. We back it up in reality. And if, you can come see for yourself every Thursday evening, so it's one thing to be really aggressive on social media. And then, that's, it's a balancing act too, between fake till you make it, especially if you're just starting up. But you have to make decisions and take opportunities to grow your actual.
So you use the words fake it till you make it. So I'll take an example like the 3-on-3 little
Yeah.
tourneys that you guys are doing. As a handball purist, I would see that on social media, and I would go like, Joey, what are you doing?
You know what?
And
Yeah. Okay.
and to my credit, did I climb all over on social media and make fun of what you guys are doing?
No,
No,
to your
not in
credit,
that
John.
instant.
That was
Not in that,
bravo.
not in that instant, but because I saw it and I'm like, oh, what are they doing? That's not handball. He's trying to get the word out there, and he's trying to get people engaged. Maybe this isn't handball anywhere close to it, but it's going to get somebody involved, and maybe that person's going to get engaged. So I saw it there, and I guess this is where I'm going. Like, what's real, what's a facade, and in that instance, I looked at it and said, you know what, it doesn't really matter. He's trying to start a new club. He's trying to get the word out and get folks engaged.
Thank you, John Ryan. You're smarter than people give you credit for. All right, you get it. You got to.
But like at some point, when you announce somebody as the ambassador for Detroit handball, at some point I go like, come on, what does this mean? And is it just a way of grabbing attention, which maybe you guys don't even need anymore?
That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me, John Ryan. Thank you so much. I'm blushing right now for those of you not watching the video. Well, to your point earlier, right? The acknowledgement of, well, to answer your question just then is like, you have to have a purpose for everything you're doing. For everything you're doing, you have to understand why. Why am I doing this? And what's this a means to, or is this the ends? So right, yeah, with the 3v3 thing, you're right. That's not handball, but you've seen the comments on our college national championship YouTube videos. I'm an American. That's not handball. That's gym class something. So no offense to any superstar college athletes, but that the argument, the purist of handball, you have to be practical as far as
and let's be fair. Our college program isn't to the level that I would hopefully we'll see it here, and with more teams playing and more teams playing at a higher level. It was still, in my mind, especially West Point, Virginia, from a few years ago, it was handball, and it was athletic, and to me it was watchable and entertaining. And I was a little annoyed with the Europeans jumping on our YouTube page saying, how old are these guys, et cetera, because they didn't have context.
Yeah.
Whereas I was like going with the 3-on-3 thing.
Context again, though. Context
again in what you're trying to do. And, but I like to think our college game is a little bit above the Detroit 3-on-3 league.
We can disagree. Okay, well, here's some context for you. We live in the United States of America, which is the biggest sports country on earth. If you're going to tout yourself as the best in the United States, be better. Represent the United States and just be better. Improve yourself. Okay, this will be a tangent completely.
Sure.
So I will limit that. But you know what? Okay, fine. If you want to be college national champion, it's one thing to beat up on little James Madison, who is basically one very good player with his friends, and call yourself the best college player or college team in the United States of America. It's another thing to actually become a handball player and learn the nuances and learn how to play the game, and with the knowledge of the fact, and I think this gets lost on many people, but that a under 14-year-old Danish girls team just dart at a map of Denmark and pick a club from any town could absolutely wallop the majority of teams in the United States. That's a reckoning I think we need to, at some point as a community in the United States, realize.
I don't think it's quite at that level. Nothing against 14-year-old girls teams in Denmark, but I give our skill level a little bit higher higher quality in that. But that being said, we do have to get better. We do have to, get our teams better. We need more teams playing. It's
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll get off my soapbox. I had to put that in there. I'm sorry.
No, I fully get it. Our level of play needs to improve. There's no doubt about it. I'm happy to say I think that there's some step processes in place and some plans in place that will definitely improve the college game. Getting back on the social media aspect of it, though, I'll ask again. What's Gautier's role as an ambassador, and what will he be doing?
He is exciting. He's a very exciting player as well as figure for the sport of handball in general. He's a very exciting guy, and so the fact that he wanted to work with us, I was very flattered, and we were very flattered collectively. But here's a little blast from the past. During the World Championship, I don't know what magazine. I think it might have been The Athletic, but one of the bloggers or reporters for that company put out a video of Gautier playing, and it got, within 2 hours, probably close to a million views before IHF or DAZN or something flagged it and took it down.
Your numbers are a little high. It did get some. Yes, it did get some significant.
I took screenshots.
Yeah, I don't think there was a million views. All right, I think it was several thousand.
800,000 versus a million. I'm sorry, John.
Roger, several thousand. I don't even know if it was 100,000 because it got taken down.
Yep.
All right, and it was Roger Sherman with the Ringer was the guy that did it, and he had some fun, clever tweets, that got a lot of attention, and it was a shame. It was like I heard that it was automatic software, that took it down, which what's the logic of that? And he had a follow-on tweet that was exactly like that. I don't know, if I was International Federation trying to get my sport more popular, and there's thousands of follow-on messages, tweets, whatever, saying, well, this is cool. I would do everything in my power to further promote that.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that, especially for a media guy, that this is where he saw something and it was great. I saw the same thing. I mean, that's when I saw him lumber out there, and I was like, oh, what on earth? And then I saw him like a little overweight, but he's definitely got some skills.
He can score goals against the best players in the world.
He gets the ball, he's going to score. Can't run back on defense because that's a major problem. But you know what? The dude can play, and he's got personality. He's fun, and totally captured that. And that's why I think it was such a big media moment, if you will. How can he, as being a figure in our handball world, help Detroit as an ambassador?
On a lot of fronts. He's proven that he captures the imagination of not just the handball community, which he has, I think, thoroughly grabbed the imagination of every single handball outlet and player and coach, and just he's, I don't want to say the biggest star in the handball world, because there's some, you can debate about that ad nauseum, but he's somebody that everyone recognizes, everyone knows. And so to have him affiliated with our brand, and also not only in the handball world, right, he's popular, captures the imagination of American sports fans, like incredibly. One of them being the one and only Shaquille O'Neal. So the possibilities are really endless with Gautier as a player. Once we are able to have a league structure or something that's interesting enough, but also as a partner to raise awareness for the sport in the United States.
All right. I I see what you're saying. I just don't see the concrete results coming from it yet.
Um,
But
what would
but
be
we'll see. What's the end goal? What will happen that I will go like, oh, I get it now.
when you and me are riding on a yacht in about 15 years because the Detroit Handball Club becomes the biggest brand in handball. That, I mean, anything short of, I don't know. It's a process. If I had a crystal ball and could figure out, okay, I got to do X, Y, Z to get to A, B, or C, that would be great. But we're taking opportunities as they come, and we're trying to do the most with them. Which again, I think it's a big Detroit thing. Taking the opportunities you have, running with them.
All right. Well, let's explore that a little bit.
Yeah.
You've made a lot of progress. You've got a lot of things moving forward. You've made a lot of progress. It's been stalled out a little bit, I think, because of COVID.
I think it's accelerated.
Okay. Where do you see your club at the end of this season? Let's assume that there's a normal season. Where do you see your club in the backdrop of the United States, and then in the world stage, if you will?
The
1
fact that
year.
we're being compared to New York City already without playing our first ever official USA team handball match is one of the biggest compliments we can receive. So I want to start with that. So the fact that we're even in the same breath as New York City or Cal Heat, that's, I think, very nice from a
In the same breath, in what context?
you tell me. You've tweeted that we're just another New York City.
I think in terms of a social media presence, and in terms of people know that there is a handball club in Detroit.
Splendid for a city to. I mean, again, while people know Detroit, it's no New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco.
Okay,
Again,
so that's something. All right,
that's not
I'm
nothing.
not sure if it's meaningful in terms of concrete accomplishments.
Concrete accomplishments being something akin to, okay, we have 15 youth teams, or we're playing in the Super Globe.
Playing in the Super Globe. All right.
I'm asking you, competitive accomplishments or
okay.
marketing?
Well, I think both probably, but that's kind of the question I'm asking. What is the goal of the Detroit? Where do you see you guys at the end of the 2022 season, and where do you see yourself at the end of the 2027 season?
I learned last year that making year-long predictions, maybe it's bad luck, maybe it's just not. I don't know, just kind of funny.
Well,
this is what we want to do. This is what we want to do.
Set goals. Set high but achievable goals. It's the first thing they teach you at the Air Force Academy.
Excellent. Competitively, the best first team in the United States. Whether it's, I don't know, because the labyrinth of rules that has to do with elite qualifications and just sort of our practical restrictions as far as playing an elite. Whether we're playing an open or elite, just have the best team possible, and we can prove that in a number of ways. Long-term wise, we want to be the number one brand in the sport, and we want to be the Flensburg or the Kiel of American handball.
In terms of the competitive, where do you think you'll be at the end of 2022, and then where do you want to be at the end of 2027?
The best. At 2027, I think, quite frankly, John, by 2022, we'll just be having a different discussion because of the growth we're going to have. We're going to be on a different level. I think the sport will as well, but I think with our work ethic and our where we want to be, it would be, yeah, we'll be on a different level.
At the end of this season?
Yes, this time next year.
All right, you're going to be competing in elite?
So that depends on. I thought we were going to be competing in elite in 2020, and then even before COVID, like I guess the rules changed. So we'll play wherever we're allowed to play, but everyone will know we have the best team in the United States of America, and you can come and prove us wrong.
Well, I'd be willing to take, if I was a betting man, and I am, I'd be willing to take some odds on that.
Good.
But I think that's a good goal to have. I think your timeline might be a little ambitious. Historically, teams have had to be humbled before they can reach the mountaintop.
Anybody, bring it.
And I can speak from personal experience on that. Unless you're doing some outstanding recruiting, and it's going to take you a while to get to the mountaintop.
What if I told you that we had three players that have trained with a Champions League caliber club? What if I told you we had a man of the match for the IHF World Championships willing to get on a plane right now? And some people too that are just waiting in the wings. I won't even mention. What if I told you, John Ryan?
I would say, Joey, you're never going to be one of those guys to put together a mercenary team to win a title.
Mercenary, you want to do it professional.
What?
Mercenary or professional team? There's a difference.
Well, there are professional teams that are clearly mercenary to some extent.
So would you call like the Colorado Avalanche mercenary because they have Canadian and whatever?
If they were an amateur team. So, I mean, I think if you're an amateur team and you're bringing in ringers, if you will, or jokers from a European context to make your team better, to win a title, that's mercenary. And everybody in the U.S. to different levels has been guilty of that. Both New York and San Francisco have plenty of players on their teams that don't even live in the cities where they practice.
Look at Los Angeles, quote unquote, team handball.
Los Angeles a couple years ago was a joke.
Yeah.
They weren't Los Angeles. So, especially if your national title is a one-off, one weekend tournament. I'd like to see us have, quite frankly, this is why I'm a bigger proponent of the college game than our club games. At least there is some modicum of roster consistency and control where everybody's playing with the same playing field. Whereas our national championships is like,
but what advantage do I have over anyone else in American handball? Everyone in the United States of America is just as capable and has the same resources. I'm not some billionaire or savant who can, do this. I'm just a guy who's willing to work hard. And you know what, too, to the amateur point, you're right. It might right now be amateur and look around. That's all it is. But you know what, you have to dress for the job you want almost and say, you know what, if we want this to be professionalized, if we want to take this seriously, we have to take ourselves seriously.
But if you were to bring in a bunch of guys to beef up Detroit at the national championships,
what's to stop another team from doing the same thing?
There are some controls in terms of people have to play like in certain events in order to get on the roster. Not as much as I would like to see, but there are some requirements in terms of what will get you on a national championship tournament roster. I'm not sure exactly what those rules are.
I don't think anybody does.
Well, I think there's a rule book. I don't know how closely it's followed. I think you have to play at least one event prior to you go to national championships. So if you're going to bring in some guys from Europe to come play, they'd have to come I don't know, play in a tournament in Chicago or something, or West Point, in order to be able to play on Detroit at the national championships. You'd probably need those guys too in order to get the points, if you will, to qualify. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly how it works. And again, this is exactly why I'm more in favor of the collegiate game, because at least there's some level of playing field in terms of what the rosters are.
Yeah, but if that playing field is not disgracefully bad, but like very poor, and there's no catalyst to say let's take it up a notch, then what are we doing?
Well, I mean, are you're saying if you're not gonna tighten the rules, I'm gonna
No, I'm saying, you know what? If we like, just because we're quote unquote amateur doesn't mean we have to act like that, and we can take this seriously and professionally, because you care about this, I care about this, so many other people care about this sport, and it's disgraceful and a shame that we can't organize as a community and not only just make this. I mean, what we have right now is special, right? But it's not good enough. It's not good enough, and we have to do better and find out ways to do it. And if I mean,
but
I don't
doesn't
have a
this
crystal ball, you don't, nobody does. So we
but
have to
isn't this counter to what's the good work that you're doing now in Detroit, building in-house with players to only to say sorry to, you know, those guys when you come to the national championship roster. I'm bringing in Laszlo Nagy to beef up our roster to and yeah, you're not going to play at nationals now.
I never
because
said
I
that.
want Detroit to win a title.
No, I never said that. Remember, the first thing I said too when we started on this discussion is I'd have 3 American-born guys who went to high school and who played Little League baseball and who watched the Tigers as a kid go to the best club in Portugal to train, with some of them being invited to come back and with subsequent opportunities popping up. So I know I can, there's a lot, we have options at our disposal to be the best. So that's really what I'm trying to say, is that we are capable of achieving the goal of that.
All right. Well, all right.
On multiple fronts.
I'm skeptical as to those 3 guys leading you guys to a national title. All right.
Oh, I hope you guys hear this, Chris, and Jay.
Sure. Yeah, playing for a week in Portugal is nothing compared to the experience level of some of the players that you would be playing against in the U.S. That's why I tweeted the one time, I said, like, Detroit versus New York City handball match. You take who you got, you take what New York City puts at nationals, sight unseen. You guys are losing by double digits.
Benny, let's make that happen. Let's make that happen, Benny.
I'm sure Benny might be a little bit more diplomatic, maybe, I don't know, but
he's a nice guy.
I'm serious. I mean, if you guys were to have your team head out to Chicago and you played
after a year of them not playing any handball, I would put money on our team. New York City there'd be a challenge, but we have some players, John Ryan.
Have they ever played a real match?
Yes. Every week we have official refs. We have full 30 by 30. We have coaches. We play on a full court.
I understand that, but the level of play is nowhere near of what I see from Nyack, NYC, San Francisco. I just from looking at it, I can tell.
They lost to a middle school all-star team in Chicago in 2019.
Come again?
Nyack lost to Craig Roth's middle school all-star team in 2019 in the Chicago Michael Lepov tournament.
So if I'm not mistaken, there was at least 1 or 2 guys that had played before on that team.
So all you need is 1 or 2 guys to win a handball match, John?
Well, against an old Nyack team that probably didn't have some of their other players. Sure.
They had their whole suite of all-star players, but suffice it to say, I don't even know how we ended up here, but like I said, that's our goal. I'm not backing down from that. We're going
All
to.
right. Well, I say you're going to have to back it up by playing some matches.
Oh, we're playing
Playing some
playing all the
matches
time. Bring
against
it
the
on.
best teams. In order to
Bring it
get
on.
better, you have to play better teams.
What
That's a
teams
given.
exist right now?
What?
What teams are out there playing games right now?
Well, there's a pandemic.
There was a pandemic in Michigan too.
Yeah. Well,
And not a
no,
single case.
I give you credit for what you're doing. All right. But don't talk about beating NYC when you have not played that level of team before. And to me, as an observer of handball in the U.S. for many years, has seen many teams come and go. I'm more than open to being incredibly surprised, but let's get that, like you said, Benny, let's make it happen. Let's
and until it happens, I'll keep talking.
Well,
so that's some added pressure for you, John. Turn the screws and make it happen.
Well, there's tournaments that you guys can go compete in.
What's scheduled right
Well,
now?
there's tournaments every year that you can go compete in. Carolina has a tournament that maybe NYC will be at. Who knows? But until you even play one of those teams, count me as skeptical.
Okay, well, let's use this as a soundbite for this episode. Any single individual, collective, or just club in the United States of America that wants to push us and to call our bluff on being the best team in America, you know where to find us. Email DetroitHandballClub@gmail.com. We will put a match together and we will play. And it'll be great. And everyone will have fun, and Detroit will win.
This is a lot of talk for a team that has never won anything.
Put it out there, and let's see it happen.
Well, I love it. We'll save this sound clip and I'll post that. Let's talk a little bit about the guys that went to Portugal. What was the genesis for that? And who said, you know what, let's go train for a week in Portugal during the middle of a pandemic? How did that happen?
What does the pandemic have to do with it?
Well, just traveling to Europe was an issue. Had to be.
We made it happen.
I understand. Tell us how that came to be.
Yeah. So we thankfully the people over at Sporting CP. I don't want to butcher the proper pronunciation of the beautiful Portuguese language, but they were extremely great to work with and welcoming, and we got connected with them, and they invited us to come train because they are visionaries, forward thinkers, and they want to see the sport of handball grow in the U.S. and they want to be a resource for anyone willing to for a club like us who's willing to put in the work and make it happen. So they graciously invited us and worked with them. We have a great relationship with them. And so I just asked our guys, and they went.
So you guys flew to Portugal and you trained with Sporting for a week.
Yep.
Was that their first team, second team, a mixture of both?
Second, mixture of both actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, we worked with Carlos Canardo. Again, I'm going to butcher the beautiful Portuguese language, but the former captain of the Portuguese national team. He's their developmental coach, and he was amazing. And the difference in that 1 week with these guys is tremendous. And they were already good athletes. They became handball players. And now, okay, so worst case, and never play another game. Now we have 3 Americans who have experience playing at that level, who can be coaches, who are now player coaches for our team, and who understand, who have seen the they were Moses on Mount Sinai, and they saw the promised land, and they can come back and understand when they hear people spouting off, or when, they recognize handball when they see it now.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a great experience. I mean, just going to Portugal is a cool place to go to.
Yeah, it was cool.
I mean, playing handball at the same time. I was a little surprised though. I mean, in terms of not knowing anything about the players, other than that they hadn't been playing very long, it seemed like a little bit too much too soon.
Why?
Um, well, if you are at a low level and you haven't played the game before very much, you haven't even played any real matches against uh, experienced players. Um,
Just because
and that's
part of
the
New York
reason.
City, John, doesn't mean they haven't played in a match.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, I'm just looking back from my own experience and at a level of skill level where I could go learn something with a pro team. And you can always learn something, but it took me a few years to get to a level where I could have gone into that sort of environment without playing too much catch up, if you will. You know, um, there's a level that you gradually rise up to, is what I'm getting at. Sure. And you guys went pretty high level pretty quick. And that's why I was a little bit skeptical when I saw that. I'm like, oh wow, that's usually take Jordan Fithian. I mean, he hadn't been playing very long. He played on an Oberliga club. Now maybe that's in Germany, and that's the fourth division. Maybe Portuguese second division is roughly at that level, so that you can go in and you want to play against people better than you, but you don't want to play with people too much better than you. I mean, otherwise it limits what you can learn.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, for as much as I'll talk about dominating American handball, it would just not be if they were going there to play against these guys. Yeah, you're 1,000% correct. That would be unfortunate, but they were going there to learn, and Sporting had the understanding that we were going there to learn. There was no misunderstanding as far as we're trying to beat out people who've been playing since they were 5 years old. We're going there to learn.
Okay, so that's great, and but that is some of the context I could not cover from social media.
Yep.
And whether, in particular, if you had like the guy you said was one of their coaches, if they got some one-on-one training on like how you need to do this, how you need to do that, that would be phenomenal. I was more concerned on the part of, it's kind of like throwing the baby in the pond and, see if they can swim. That's a method of teaching somebody how to swim, but arguably it's not the best method. You see what I'm getting at?
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
It'd be better to have, an experienced swim teacher, go through the process in a systematic way to learn how to swim.
Unfortunately, experienced handball coaches are in short supply in the United States of America. So we may do, and it was a very positive experience, and it was good.
All right, well, let's dive into, I did get some questions, and I don't want to forget about those questions. I got them from Josh Forsthoffel, and I don't know if they were directed to me. Maybe they were. But we can talk about them. Why do people assume a new club will be unsuccessful?
Why do you think, John?
Because so many have been unsuccessful. There's a lot of data to back that up. And, that was part of the reason why I had that discussion with you a year and a half ago, to kind of get a handle on what your chances of success and where things might be going. But from my perspective, there's a graveyard of clubs that were around for a year or two and disappeared. My goodness, Denver is on its fourth incarnation now. 4 different clubs.
What are we counting as clubs? Are we counting Instagram accounts with the logo? Or like a one-off?
So Denver, the first 3 versions, they played matches.
Okay.
And they were around, the first couple were around for several years before they died. The last one was around for a couple years, but they never really they played in some matches, but they didn't get super amount of traction. And the fourth version that just started recently, right now, that's an Instagram club, but they could become something. Who knows? But my point is, it's tough to start a new club, and even with the best intentions and willing to really work hard, there's a lot that have failed, and I think more can be done to help those clubs, and maybe you guys will be a shining example, with your championship banners flying in the Masonic Temple as you are an inspiration to other new clubs out there.
You joke. I can't. You will be invited to our banner raising ceremony, John.
Yeah. But that's my perspective. I mean, do you agree with me? I mean, you haven't been around as long as I have, but maybe you.
Yeah, you were around when handball was invented, right?
not quite, but I've been around a while.
The Aztecs were throwing around throwing around rocks off their hips. That was
Yeah.
you
You also said, why is trying something new seen as bad? I think I don't necessarily see something new as being bad. I think I kind of judge what's being tried a little bit, and this is where I go back to the Gautier Muvumbi. It's a little bit, it's like, throwing stuff up against the wall and seeing what will stick. And I get that as a strategy sometimes, because you don't know what's going to work until you try it. I like to think a little bit more thought in terms of what's being tried.
Sure.
And also, a lot of things that are new aren't really new.
Yeah.
Like the little league, the league that you've started with Grand Rapids and Hamtramck, that was done in Atlanta. They had like a smaller local league. They called it the Bird League, and they had different, Condor started it, but they had they just picked different birds, and they divvied up the teams. So they had some experienced guys with new guys, and they played a league, and it was handball, but it was
YMCA's or what?
I think it was tied in with the Boys and Girls Club. I don't know if they had one central location, but it was kind of a rec league concept. It was kind of a feeder program for the Condors.
Sure. Very cool.
So,
yeah, no. And the league with no, it's interesting. To go to the first question, you said it, John. It's very challenging. This is like a tremendously challenging thing to do, and especially to do it to a personal standard that I want to do it to. Like, I want to do this to the best of my ability. Everyone does, I hope. Especially, this just is a very important thing. This sport and the development of the sport, and to do anything less than your best is a tremendous disservice. So that's taxing. That's very difficult. Yeah. And back to what we were saying earlier, the showing up to a gym that you paid to rent out and have nobody show up multiple times, to go through the slog, to go through the just the feeling like an idiot driving home and just feeling like, wow, I'm just the stupidest person on earth. I don't even know if stupidest is a word, but that requires a certain level of intestinal fortitude that really, and I could be wrong because I'm a young man and I haven't done much with my life, but I have the sense that anything you do that's really worth doing requires that level of sacrifice and that level of just get through it and put your nose to the grindstone. Whether it's starting a coffee shop, whether it's starting your career, maybe as an attorney or as an accountant or whatever, or just really starting anything, you have to troubleshoot. You have to be okay with being wrong. Be looking like an idiot sometimes, maybe. But just being enthusiastic and caring about it, and being aware that it's going to suck at times, that's helped me get through that. So hopefully that helps other people. If you thinking of starting a club, just to put your guts to it and just don't stop. And there was a second question there. Oh, what was the second question? Oh, the
Was
trying
this
something new. Yeah, same thing.
something new seen as bad? And then there's a third one, which speaks a little bit to the divide or perceived divide between the older handball community and the newer handball community.
Mm.
That it's hard to get included, if you will. And I think you talked a little bit about that in earlier.
Yeah, I don't think that's real. I think that's perceived quite a bit, because if you reach out to people, this community is full of like good people. Like everyone's nice, and I think there is a very, very real divide in thinking and in mentality about how things should go about, and that's you're going to find that in any community or group.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think, if we can stage the challenge match with you and NYC, I think that would be phenomenal, and it'd be a great coming together of the old and the new on the court, and then surely afterwards, which is always a great thing about handball.
We would have, regardless of the outcome, a great time, and like I really respect and admire New York City and everything they do, and like to even again just to be mentioned with them is tremendous compliment, and to have the opportunity to play against them would be a great challenge, but something I think we're ready for.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting ready to wrap this up. I was going to give you a little bit of opportunity to talk about anything you wanted to. And I know one thing we didn't mention earlier, but you got a documentary you guys are working on. You want to talk about that a little bit, and then anything else that you want to discuss before we close up.
Well, before we get to that, I got a question for you, John.
Oh, okay.
If that's okay. Is that allowed?
Yeah, I suppose.
Cool. What does success look like as far as handball goes in the U.S.? What, in your mind, what is the okay, finally we've made it, like even to just a bare requisite level, like describe that to me and everyone.
Well, I think you have to do it in terms of time frames.
Well, no, even just like,
I mean, you could talk where we're at 40 years from now, 20 years from now, 5 years from now. You're going to get a different answer as terms of what is success. And
well, give me the 40-year version. I want to see like what is the terminal.
Here's something conceptual, and I don't know if you've ever met Krister All. He was one of the old guys. He was the oldest guy reffing at Myrtle Beach.
Okay.
Sorry if I've offended you. Maybe there are some folks older.
You offended all the guys who were older than him at Myrtle
Well,
Beach.
And Krister was actually the head of officiating for the IHF for several years. He was the guy, lead responsible for determining who was going to ref Olympic game matches, world championship matches, deciding rule changes. He wasn't the only guy, but he was the chairperson for that committee. But one time he brought up the point of how things were in the early 80s. They had a collegiate championship with 8 games. The U.S. women beat Russia in a match in D.C. We had Olympic festivals. Teams were playing. Nationals were competitive. A lot of Americans playing. And he says, if anybody had told me, that we would have regressed, from that, instead of had gone, and this is 40 years ago, even before my time. He said he would have just like, I don't know exactly what he said. He said, I would have just walked away in crushing disappointment. So I think it's important to think about baby steps before we go on. It's good to have a long-term vision, but I don't think I think it's you want to hesitate before thinking about that long-term vision. You could say, we'll have handball league that's like the NBA, and we'll play in the biggest arenas, and we'll have the best national teams in the world, et cetera. I mean, it's okay to dream
2
big.
years from now.
What?
2 years from now.
What I think, I think handball should be more than a sport that you have to explain to people.
Yeah.
I think near term, I think we should have more college teams. And I think that should be the focus. And we should have a collegiate championship that means something. And we should be producing players that have the potential to go on to national teams, have the potential to sign pro contracts. And I think the collegiate leagues, collegiate programs are the place to do that. We got to build that up significantly, both in terms of quantity and quality. In terms of our national teams, I'd like to see us always competing for the title in North America and regularly qualifying for the World Championships. Getting to the top of the world, that's going to take a while. All right, and I'd like to see it. I'd like to see the right combination of players, playing for a title. But that's not easy, and I don't know how realistic it is for us to be like the best team in the world year after year. But competitive, hey, why not? They can get the right generation of players, win a title, why not? But that's more of a 20-year probably, because this is a professional sport, and the best professionals that we have currently playing, for the most part, are dual citizens, and they're playing in second divisions. They're not playing, they're playing in lower level leagues. To expect that level of talent to rise up and win a gold medal at the Olympics is pretty unrealistic.
Has
Now,
Nico Robinson broken onto the first team for Alvaro?
I think it was problematic for both him and Renee Ingram this year with the COVID.
Yeah.
So they didn't have games with the second team. So they were practicing with the first team, but they weren't getting competition. I think. I don't know for sure exactly. So I don't know what their status is. Hopefully we'll get an update on all of our players in the Forum Club handball program. I don't know what their status is. I don't know what the plans are for next year. We'll see. You just keep going on. You just keep diverting me into additional tangents.
I mean, there's literally so few people on the face of the earth that I can have a conversation like this with. I gotta use the opportunity when I can, John. And a little side note too. I mean, Renee, Nico, and I think there's a few others. Thank you for being good at handball, because otherwise I would have been chasing windmills to try to make my way on the national team.
Hey, and they might be second and third behind Pal Murkowski. I think they probably are.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, personally, I like to take credit for teaching Renee everything he knows. We were roommates in Paraguay, so Renee, you're welcome. No,
I'm saying there's a lot of goals. I think it's important that we get near-term goals.
Yeah,
and we could do a whole podcast on this. Maybe we'll do one in a month.
We should.
Something like
fun.
that.
That'd be fun.
I don't know if you want to tackle that briefly before we try and wrap up with the documentary, or
okay. Well, but I mean, before we get to that, because we talk about that. Yeah, no, that's interesting about the 80s. That's very interesting. I think too, there needs to be a sense of like responsibility, and a lot of people have it, but we need more of that, and accountability for this problem does not get solved by anyone else other than the person looking at you in the mirror. Like, if you have that mentality, and that's kind of the mentality we try to bring, is you can't try to outsource the problem solving to anyone else or anything. Work as a team. Obviously there's a great community of people, but like, if for all the social media and stuff that we do here in Detroit, like, everyone knows if we fall on our face, I'm going to look like a clown. Right. And so whether that's a good or a bad thing, that's just me being honest, as far as like, I take this personally. I take accountability and responsibility for this. And it motivates me to bring it, even if I know there's going to be nobody at this practice. You just got to show up and you got to do it, because you know what? You don't know. You just got to grind away at it.
Well, that's all well and good, but there's only so many things that you can personally control.
Very true. Very true.
So you can control what Detroit does to a certain extent, but controlling what the US does, what the IHF does, that's a little bit more challenging. You can influence, and you can be ready to step up to help, on a more macro level, but there's only so much you can do sometimes.
There is, but you know what? Again, not to even just say Detroit, America is the land of opportunity. America is the land of opportunity. Yeah. You have the opportunity here, and I'm sure it's the same everywhere else. But I mean, all I know is the United States of America. As somebody who's grown up here, there's so many ways that you can make an impact if you just relentlessly pursue whatever it is. You can make something happen. I think we're an example of that, and we're not going to stop anytime soon. But like, to be creative, to think outside of the box, to be beyond the pale. I mean, you said that intramural idea has been done before, but I mean, in my lifetime, it hasn't been. So we're reviving that. Be beyond the pale and just think creatively. You can. There's endless opportunities.
Yeah.
Endless.
There's also the serenity prayer.
Yeah, there you go. I love the yin to the yang thing we got going, John.
Yeah. Well, one last chance to talk about your documentary before we wrap up.
Yeah, so the documentary is it's a project we've been working on since 2019. We linked up with an amazing film producer named Andrew Acciaioli. Got that name right. Nailed that. There you go, Andrew. I usually struggle there. And we were fortunate enough to have him pretty much follow the club from its inception in 2019, from that first video we made, to planning for nationals, to our first practices, to literally everything we've done up to last Saturday. So we're documenting that, and we're putting it out in a way that is professionally done and compelling for people to watch.
What's going to be the end point?
We're figuring that out right now. We have no idea.
How about the challenge match between NYC?
That's out of my hand, isn't it?
You might have to do some creative editing.
You might have to just yeah.
Well,
CGI
hey, Joey,
New York.
Yeah, I really enjoyed chatting with you. I know we got off on a few tangents, but like I said, there's only so many people you can talk about handball in the U.S. Maybe we'll explore some of those topics in greater detail. Maybe you and JD can on your podcast. I can always come on as well to chat on those sorts of topics. There's no shortage of big things happening, big questions, big debates.
Sure. You should have a Handball Haven guy. You should talk to him. I would be interested in watching that.
Well, he knows 10 times more about social media than I do. That might not mean too much.
Maybe you can learn, man.
So anyway, for Joey Williams, I'm John Ryan. Thanks for listening to the Team Handball News Podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media and to sign up for it in your favorite podcast delivery system, Spotify, Apple. I like Feedly. There's all sorts of possibilities. Anyway, thanks for listening.